Hey, movie lovers, back for another Anatomy of Movie here on Popcorn Talk. Today we're talking Life of the Party starring Melissa McCarthy. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The husband and wife duo of Melissa and Ben is back in directing and starring capacity with this latest release of Life of the Party.
Writing, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. We will talk all of that, but before we get into anything, allow me to introduce Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
Demetri Panos.
Hey, movie fans, I'm back!
He's back. And I'm Svitek. Welcome to the show. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome to the show. If you're returning, welcome back. A couple of administrative things that we should probably tell you about. Number one, we assume that you've seen the movie to a degree, so it is going to be spoiler-filled in that way. Although it's a comedy, you could say, you know what, certainly not the Avengers. Perhaps you don't care if it's spoiled for you. Nonetheless, you've been warned. Second off, we're going to talk mainly the story, but we'll also get into some production details and so forth. We're going to talk box office numbers and all that jazz, so we try to go as in-depth and round out the conversation in its entirety about the movie, not just a review and storyline type of thing. And lastly, if you want to follow along in the description box, whether on iTunes, whether on YouTube, or so forth, there's a little box that says, here's the rundown, and you just click it, and it's a PDF, and you can follow along. For your enjoyment, if you will. But without further ado, before we can get into any of that stuff, we have to know what you guys thought of the movie, right? Marisa.
Right. Well, I thought this movie was fun. I love Melissa McCarthy ever since Gilmore Girls. I mean, she'll always be Sookie to me. She was great, and she's always fun and lighthearted. I enjoy her movies. She always brings the good laughs. I laughed a lot in this movie, and I feel like I was probably one of the only younger people, and younger I say in the 20-something-year-old people, that laughed more than the regular millennials did, and I think maybe because I just understood the older people jokes in that way. So I laughed a lot. I actually enjoyed this film. I don't think it deserves, and we'll get to the ratings and stuff, but I don't think it deserves all the backlash that it's getting and all the poor reviews it's getting. It's a fun movie. It's light.
Okay.
That's it.
Dimitri?
Well, I'm not quite sure of what backlash the movie's gotten, but for me, this was not a good movie. I was not. This was not, we've had so many good comedies this year thus far, and this one sort of kind of brings everything down. For me, Life of the Party, number one, it doesn't showcase, I don't think it showcased Melissa McCarthy's true, talents. Everything in this movie tried so hard to play it safe, and they forgot. They were having fun making the movie, you can tell, because they had all their friends on board. But we as an audience, or me as in the audience, wasn't having all that much fun watching them. There was one inspired moment, and I'll get to that in a moment, which I thought, hey, this is what I've been waiting for in this movie. Very funny, but it just wanted to play it it wanted to have it all, but yet it couldn't focus on, do we want to be a little raunchy? And as raunchy as this movie got was Google. And I saw that in the trailer. There was nothing really inspired about this movie. Back to School is a far better movie that deals with a very, very similar topic. Everything happened too easy, too, in this movie. I get, it's a great premise. She has this life-changing thing happen. Her husband's a jerk. And she goes into school. You figure the daughter was pissed off for 2 seconds, and then it's all accepting. All the friends are, oh my God, we love your mother. And everything just happened very, very easily. There's no clear-cut villain. My other issue was this whole wedding that happened in the movie. The daughter who loves the mom. I was rooting for Melissa McCarthy and the crew for what they were doing. And then when you see the daughter at the wedding, which makes sense, yeah. I was like,
we'll get into all that.
I just felt that this movie, no bueno. There were a couple of laughs. I'd be lying if I say I didn't laugh, but not compared to other movies that came out this
Fair
earlier.
enough. I'm kind of in a similar boat. I think with a comedy, at the end of the day, you gotta there's a crux of it that is emotional, that takes that emotion and heightens it to its extremity in terms of ridiculousness. And I do think a lot of this movie kind of was parsed together via skits, in a sense, where the scene itself could be considered funny, but in the context of the grander thing, it doesn't quite make sense. And one of the things, I want to jump story-wise kind of right into it, and then we'll backtrack about them also writing it as you pointed out and so forth. But as far as the first thing of it for me was the spark of it is the breakup, right? The divorce more so, and then the fact that we never really get Maddie's side of it, as far as how she feels about her father and so forth. That to me was just a missed emotional beat. Maybe not a comedic beat, but an emotional beat to set me up as where does she stand in the middle of all this? Because we know it's plain as day how Deanna thinks about this.
Well, but to your point, though, again, there was no follow-up in these skits, as you want to put them. But she did say, the daughter, Maddie, did say, what an asshole. Like, she was pissed at the beginning when she heard about the divorce. But again, there was never follow-up, and they never had anything like that. So I totally see what you're saying, but I think that's the way the whole movie was.
Let me ask you this, Marisa, since you enjoyed it certainly more so than us.
Yeah, and I think because this movie is more geared towards women, you guys are guys and you're not liking this film.
Well, let me ask you.
I completely disagree.
Let me pose the question to you this way: as far as realism, because I don't dislike the movie because I don't understand the humor. To me, it's just a little bit unrealistic. So I want to ask you, like, as far as the realism of all of it.
Oh yeah, there were some aspects in the relationship, whether it be towards the husband or towards the friends, that was unrealistic. But I can get through that because it was just the situations that you're watching are more humorous than the actual reality of it all. As for the husband, he was a dick at the beginning. Sorry, I'm completely making our show explicit already, but I'm gonna say it. The father was a dick. So when you have the daughter. If the daughter was going to be mad at the mom, knowing that this whole movie was going to be the mother and the daughter going to be together, and the daughter's already starting the movie off mad with the mom, you know that's not going to happen, then the movie's not going to work, because the mother needs the daughter's mother-daughter relationship so she can have the relationship with the daughter's friends throughout the film. So it makes sense that the daughter wasn't going to be mad at the mother throughout this whole divorce.
But it seemed out of necessity. When you say it like that, it's like we had to get to this. And I don't know, what were you going to say?
Well, again, it goes to one of my biggest flaws of that character and the writing of the movie is that, okay, I can understand that she would be upset at the dad for cheating on the mom, and I get that and the whole bonding thing, but here's my problem. So the scene when they go trash the wedding, it made sense that Maddie was at the wedding. She didn't say she was going at the wedding because I was wondering, where is she? And then, oh, she's at the wedding because we see her. But before we see her at the wedding, we saw some pretty damning things, like those poster boards that said, upgrade the wife, better life. And I'm sitting there going, what child would be on board with that and not say, fuck you, I'm going to go trash the wedding with my mom and her friends. Because that was so dickish. And to have that at a wedding where your daughter is at, I mean, the daughter's got to go through this divorce too. And I'm like, that would just not fly. And there was no relationship with the father previously that we could see. And so that was one thing that really stuck out. I was like, why is she on board? Why is she still part of this wedding? And why is she upset with her mom when after you read something when they publicly are shaming Melissa McCarthy's character, how is she on board with that as a daughter? She wouldn't be. If she loved her mom as much as she says she does, she wouldn't be on board with that.
Well, even earlier, to me, the turn at first when she does come to college and meets her friends and the daughter, I'd love to hear your perspective on it, Marisa, because it seemed like they were very standoffish of like, wait, you're not serious. And maybe it was the daughter, and that's kind of how eventually they played it out, was that her friends were more into this idea than Maddie. But just the way they reacted didn't indicate to me in that moment that they were on board with this idea. It was a very quiet scene. They were very standoffish. There wasn't any energy and excitement. And then all of a sudden they turn the switch and it's like, okay, hey, we're going to go party with you.
Yeah, I get that, but I think that's a natural reaction, knee-jerk reaction for any child to realize, hey, I'm going to have classes with you, with their own parent, and I think that was just like a natural moment, like, I don't want to be with my parents, but we also understand how close the relationship is from the mother to the daughter, and that they're 22 minutes away, so like, that dynamic I completely understand, that sometimes you're close enough with your parents that proximity wise you live close, but also in emotional wise, yeah, you don't want to always be with your parents, but once you are, you realize, hey, you do like their presence around.
I don't know, I still feel
it
like
didn't earn it for me.
It didn't. Like, if there was a problem, right, there was a perfect opportunity. Deanna comes in and helps the various girls throughout their troubles. Had they been very standoffish and very early on, the daughter texted her like, hey, we have no other option, please, can you help? And they as you said, earn that switch, then I would have bought it. But I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of girls that would, and a lot of girls' friends that would just cringe at the idea that their parent is in college with them.
I keep on thinking, another thing that I thought of a lot watching this movie was the Goldbergs. If anybody watches that show, the Goldbergs, and Wendy McLaren-Covey, who is brilliant as Mrs. Goldberg, is that smothering kind of a mother. And that show, I would rather watch 3 episodes, which is about an hour and a half of that show, because that ends up with heart and things are actually earned, even though she is a smothering mother. You get it. It's funny. She's funny. For me, where Melissa McCarthy wasn't necessarily smothering, but you could also tell, though, how for a kid that it would sort of be like, you're cramping my style. Like, I can't imagine a kid being on board so easily that their mom is in school with them. And I get the whole thing about the friends loving the mom, my friends love my mom and everything like that. But there's still that, when you're in college, there's supposed to be a little bit of separation, even if you commute.
Well, I think there was separation too, because every time we saw them together, it seemed as if it was only minutes apart from each other. But there were actual moments and lines where like, I haven't seen you in a week. I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, X, Y, and Z. So like, just in the writing of the storyline, like they do go days apart away from each other. So it's not like she was smothering and bringing the girls breakfast every single day. It's like there were actual direct lines like, I haven't seen you in a week.
As far as that, I think it just needs to parse down some of its stuff, because to me, the crux of it is the daughter and her, and it's her dream of earning this degree because of this horrible thing that's happened to her, but it's a blessing in disguise, right? And we didn't, as far as her passions, like, although we spent a lot of time in the classroom, there was just an emotional, it never went as deep as it could have, both in the comedy and emotional stakes. And that's where, for me, the fault really lies.
Yeah, and remember when we talked about blockers here? And blockers, albeit it's sort of a different comedy, but there's some similarities. It's parents being overprotected of the girls who are about to go off to college. So there was that separation anxiety going on there. There was a single mom. Right, but that movie had so much heart that the parent, like, you understood the parents, you understood the girls, and as farcical as it became, it was a very funny movie because you bought into the heart that movie had, and it earned for itself. Where this movie tried to have a ton of heart, and it because of that, it failed to dose up a lot of comedy. And Melissa McCarthy, let's face it, is one of the funniest women that we have as a talented actress and comedian, for both whatever it's sketch comedy, but when you look at the movies that she's been in, she elevates them. She elevated like Bridesmaid. The Heat is fantastic. Spy, fantastic. I mean, in the right movies, her physical comedy and her edge her edge is what works too. And this movie really didn't have any edge except for one inspired scene. I felt so that for me, that's where it hurt. It was really dulled down.
Marisa, kind of falls on you to be the savior and defend this movie.
God. Yeah, I get that also, but those were also down, like, for cock blockers, that movie, we spent a lot of time with teenagers. They're in high school, and we're spending a lot of time with these girls who are clearly outsiders. They're kind of the misfits, and like, but also there's that relatability factor with the mother, with Deanna, because she was also a misfit essentially within her peers. So like, and I understood like that dynamic of from the parent to the kids and always wanting to like help them out and whenever. Yeah, it may not have gone as deeply emotional, but because this movie is so light, I don't think it needed it to get the laughs that it did.
Okay. Well, I look at one of the scenes for me that went on a little bit too long is her struggling through her class presentation. And for me, it was like, okay, well, there's so much more for her to deal with in life, and that is ruining this dream of her being an archaeologist and so forth, that why put that obstacle in front of her? Have her be, she was getting good grades, and have her be the best that she can be, but the problem is that, because of the divorce, she can't get money, and so forth. Like, life's already hard enough. Why give her that little bit of extra just for a 10-minute joke about her sweating her armpits?
Yeah, I felt it was a Saturday Night Live skit that didn't really go anywhere because I wasn't believing that she was I understand the fear of public speaking. That I get. But she didn't seem to be afraid of doing anything public. Speaking in front of all her friends and doing all that. So, and if you're going to at least address it earlier on, not like right there and then, and show that you're at least going to attempt to try to do something. But that went on too long. And I also felt when she was home with her parents, explaining, about how the jerk husband left her, the parents yelling went on for me. Like, I was like, what the hell is going on here? He comes out, he takes a gun out, and she's like, I don't want a sandwich.
At least it was early on where I was just like, okay, you know what, I get it. It's fun enough. I was still on board at that point. All right, well, why don't we shift gears into kind of what for me was the most not the most interesting because I enjoyed it the most, but I don't know how to describe it, but let's essentially talk about Jack and her relationship. Marisa, how did you feel about this? Her magical Vagoogle.
I think it was funny. I can understand, like, it probably that young college guy who's never really experienced real love, and then he gets his first experience with a mature woman. It was funny. He was sweet, and I was like, he's so stupidly naive, too, to the point where it was endearing to watch. But, like, I actually didn't mind this running joke throughout the entire film. I thought it was funny. Give her some life, Like,
yeah,
she's obviously going through a midlife crisis, breaking up with her dick husband. Yeah, give her some fun to play with the younger one. Why not?
That character, Jack, well, they set him up, too, from the beginning as just being a little bit different, right? He knows about Chardonnay, right? He knows, like, he's not the typical frat boy, and he's taken with this woman, right? Who's an older woman, and I can understand. She's like, oh my God, this is a whole new world. I've been with this one man, and finally somebody who's, listen, he's strong enough in my manhood to say he was a handsome guy, and I get why I get where the attraction was, right? I thought that was fun. To me, though, the inspired moment came at the restaurant when that twist comes out, when we find out that Jack is actually the son of Julie Bowen, Marcy. Like Marcy. that to me, that was like the fork, like that. And Maya Rudolph and the gentleman who played her husband, I thought they were fantastic. Like, that was the most inspired scene for me in the movie. I did not see it coming. And those to me, like when you can't see that joke coming, that makes for comedy. That's where I laughed out loud. I thought, that's brilliant. I think we're going to turn a corner. And that's really all that was left. But Maya Rudolph was great. That whole scene played out perfectly. Although I did feel sort of kind of bad for Jack because he was sort of kind of being talked about. Well, he was right there.
Well,
like,
I thought I did, like, when that came about, I did think it was a great moment, as you said. But there was never really a follow-up to it. You know, like, when that happens, it's supposed to be a very gut-wrenching thing of, like, okay, if I truly have emotions for Jack, and whether or not it's going to end up being, like, a love thing, nonetheless, he's a good kid and deserves what he, deserves a good life. And yet, this contradiction that he's Marcy's kid, who I absolutely despise. Better wife, better life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now, how do you reconcile that? Well, I guess you just don't deal with it.
Except in the restaurant, which was funny, but it never really.
That's what I'm saying.
She slept with him again.
So she did call it off, though.
Yeah.
But
it was a simple breakup.
But it shouldn't. But to me, it's not a simple thing.
Right.
It's a very emotionally charged moment. That's why the comedy of that scene works so well, is because everyone's trying to figure out how to cope with it, and they're completely saying the wrong thing, or just like spur of the moment, as you said with Maya Rudolph's character.
Yeah, and nobody was actually taking Jack's feelings into consideration at that point, including Deanna. I mean, it's farcical. That's what makes it comedy. But picture the character going, wait, that's your mom. Wait, you're keeping on talking to me as if now you're sleeping with me out of revenge from my mom. Like, nobody was taking that into consideration at all. Again, maybe it's not that kind of movie. It made that one scene funny, but it's never really addressed again. And like Jack, they don't give Jack anything to really say to stick up for himself. And you sort of kind of do feel bad for him. He's not a villain in this story. And to your point, he has deep emotions for Deanna for his reasons. And you understand why. I liked his innocence. I forget how you put it, Marisa, but
he's naive.
He is, but he didn't play stupid. He's a college kid.
That was an opportunity as far as Maddie being upset with the mother. That could have been a turning point for her at the wedding and so forth, because in essence she ruined Jack's mom's wedding, and it's like, okay, like, forget Marcy aside, you're killing this kid. I get very pained when I watch movies and I see missed opportunities, because I look at you, Marisa, and I want to have that experience that you had, and I want it to be the movie that for me it could have been. I wanted
it to be the trailer that they showed me. And there was lots to explore, and again, the movie just didn't have follow through. Again, like the scene in the classroom when the girl, who is it? Was it Jennifer?
Oh, the snobby.
No.
The villain.
No, Coma Girl.
Oh, so the friend.
The friend.
Okay.
Where she cuts that girl's hair off, right? Okay, so that's sort of funny. It never goes anywhere. And I kept on thinking of the great scene that happened in 16 Candles that's sort of similar, where the girl got her hair stuck in the door. And they had to cut her hair, and she was the snobby one. But it's brought up later. She did. She totally deserved it. But there's a payoff to it, too. Like, what happened to my hair? And there was no payoff here. Like, if she's the villain, let's have the comeuppance for the villain. And she just cut her hair, and that was the end of that joke.
I think it was just like a lot of small things, like cutting of the hair. We knew that this girl is awful, and there's always that one girl or 5 girls in the world in every single freaking class that's like that. I've dealt with them, trust me.
An archaeology class of all places?
No, just in school, in life, in college, in high school, and fucking grade school. Yeah, there's always the bitches out there, like Helen. Sorry, I'm going off.
This episode really is explicit. I didn't realize Life of the Party would be this.
We're more lively
in the movie. A little bit, but there's always the bitch in class, or like it could be the guy too. And she was awful. She was great at being awful. And we had that whole fight scene and stuff. So like it kind of, there was a lot of small moments like cutting in the hair and building up to the ultimate fight at the end, which was still funny. That was funny.
Speaking of the ultimate end, I want to ask you guys about her roommate and her. It was
Lenore.
Or Leonore.
Leonore.
Yes, we never really did learn how to pronounce her name, did we?
No.
But she is cousins with Christina Aguilera.
Right.
I knew she had to have a moment. I was like, they're doing something with her. She's so mysterious. She doesn't get out of the room. She's so dry, and like you saw the sweet moments where she's like, "Thank you, friend," and all that. So like you knew they were building up a moment for her. And then when we saw her at the party at the end, I was like, "Hey, she's out of the room.
Right.
She's in a different house." I was like, "What is she doing here?" I was like, so like you knew it was building up to a moment for her character that ultimately brought Christina.
That should have been an applause, laughable moment that she's actually out of her dorm room. I liked Heidi Gardner. I was hoping that relationship was going to be better developed, and because I liked Lenore. I liked the character. I liked her. It was like I liked the. How long have you been sitting there? Oh, about 6 minutes. Jesus, you gotta stop. Like, had they done that, comedy is like a rule, sort of kind of like the rule of three. There was no three. She just shows up at the end again, and it would have been nice. She always said that Deanna was really nice, but I wanted her to inspire her maybe a little bit sooner while Leonore comes out with the girls. Like, she was a fun character, but did Deanna really earn her respect so quickly? I mean, because she earned it really fast. She goes, "I like you," or something, but I liked how she was played. I liked how she saved the day. Oh, so did my cousin. Yeah, she's my sister. No, we're not. We're cousins.
You know, it seems that Deanna has that certain je ne sais quoi that Demetri and I just don't know. But, you know, speaking of that inspiration, when we talk about Coma Girl, she was struggling in class, and then, you know, I'm going to... Only because you bring it up so often, Marisa. Her math skills were as good as Marissa's.
No, I literally, I was like, oh my God, this is me. This would be me struggling with multiplication right now. I laughed. I completely.
And it was funny, but, you know, in that moment, apart from Deanna saying, like, "Oh, I'm worried about you," that was an opportunity for her to really help her with archaeology. Maybe not so the math thing, but certainly archaeology. Like, if the girl's not getting good grades and you are, work together.
I thought that was going to happen. I thought there was going to be more inspiration. And again, when you look at a movie like Old School, that is, or not Old School, but Back to School, right? That is part of what happens. Parent learns from the child learns something from the parent, and I figured that there would have been more. And Jennifer could have been a far better character, and I like Debbie Ryan. But if you notice the movie too, Debbie Ryan seemed to be relegated a lot to be in the background and to make funny faces. She was making a lot of faces in the background.
Are you talking about Coma Girl? Or just...
Isn't
Helen's
Coma Girl? Helen's Coma Girl? I thought it was Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Jennifer is the mean girl.
All right, forgive me. Helen was relegated to being this friend who I liked. I liked the whole story. And to your point, I wanted maybe Melissa McCarthy. Deanna could have helped her out some. Like, how is she going to get out of school? Like, again, I felt that if Deanna is the center of this movie, Deanna should learn something, but she should impart something on all of her friends that they take to better their grades. Like, if Helen was having a hard time with school and could have been kicked out, maybe she helps her and she learns through, because she was inspired to take archaeology, in a sense, because of Deanna, right?
I was so confused by that.
She was undeclared.
She was undeclared, but then she says, "Oh, after I talked to you, and then I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark." And
I mean, I get that. Here's the thing. What's strange to me is because of the way the first interaction went, I thought she was always in that class, just didn't want to admit it. So I get it, and you guys are correct. Like, but it just still left me some confusion as to what.
But I liked her character, and she had one funny moment at that party when that guy was trying to pick her up, and she shut her eyes, and it's like, "Oh my God, you're in a coma again." She's like, again, there was a lot of missed opportunity, and she was actually the best friend in a sense. I liked all the misfits there too. Oh, can I ask a question? You don't have to ask. You
don't have to raise your hand.
Yeah, you don't have to raise your hand. They each had character qualities that fit well into a comedy, right? But they weren't exploited enough to like fully come out to make this really a funny comedy. I felt they were very safe, which was too bad because I actually liked the girls. And the act, I can't say that there were bad performances in this movie. The supporting cast, like Maya Rudolph, I thought was funny. I thought she was extremely funny, and her husband, they were great together. So I liked everybody. I just wanted more, and the young girls were very good too. So
Which one was your favorite, Marisa, as far as the sorority sisters?
I liked Helen, Gillian Jacobs, because she's kind of not so much the maternal one, but she was the older one out of all of them. She seemed more level-headed compared to everybody else, and she had her moments in it. I think you guys are questioning why she's in archaeology. I think it was just for the setup that Deanna could always be with one of the girls at all times throughout the college. Like, it was just more screen time to have Deanna have a fun friendship with someone.
That hurts me when you say it just like that. Because if that's the only reason, to me, that's just not a good enough reason. And by the way,
screen time.
Yeah, but it's an opportunity. Anytime there's screen time, it's an opportunity for something to happen. And I think we've already brought up some of the things that could have happened.
But also, like, in the end, yeah, you guys didn't like her sweating pits and all that scene, but it did come back to the moment at the end when she did get through her better speech and all the girls did come and support her. So I feel like, yeah, we may have, like, superficially had friendships with all the girls and didn't get deep enough, apparently, but it got deep enough that all the girls cared about Deanna too and had her back and supported her and came back to the classroom at the end when she was giving her archaeology speech the second time.
Yeah, I don't...
Some jokes did come around to have better endings.
The end when they all showed up, I got it. Not 100% earned. I did like Gillian Jacobs as Helen, and I liked Leonore. I thought they really were fun characters that I wanted to explore more. Again, I noticed that Helen or Gillian Jacobs was relegated in the background a lot, and she was just making faces. And I didn't know if it was facial tic. Like, I didn't know what was going on. And I wanted her to be... Again, it would have been great had Deanna maybe tried to mentor her. I don't even know what Deanna's daughter's major was, to be honest with you. So she at least picked archaeology because she heard Deanna talk about it. And I'm like, okay, there's opportunity here to help her out. She gets stinky grades, and that was mentioned, and I go, it's not a romantic comedy. She just got divorced, but I understood the relationship with Jack. They were maybe trying to set something up with the professor, but
I thought for sure that would have happened. But my issue, Marisa, is we threw out, if we parse down on some of the stuff that didn't need to be there, and just elevated what was there, because you're right, like, stuff did come around, but it was also mixed together with everything else. And the more they kind of teach this in writing class, the more singular an idea and a story can be, and everything else is in support of that, the stronger it will be. And I felt we go off on too many tangents left and right for a potential joke. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And
do you think this film suffers from too many people in it? It's more an ensemble.
No, I don't think it's the number of people. I think it's the number of ideas trying to be crammed into those people.
Yeah. No, it definitely wasn't that. It wasn't a numbers game because you had a good cast and you had, I think to an extent, somewhat inspired characters that could have really blossomed. But they never followed through with a lot, and you never gave these people much to do, and it really did play it safe. I'm not saying that you had to go full on raunch, but you could have been a little bit edgier. in making this comedy. And when you look at even when you look at going back to school, when you look at the plot points and what happens, and they're between Rodney Dangerfield and Melissa McCarthy, you understand why Melissa McCarthy wants to go back. And I think that was a key empowerment moment where she wanted to go back to school for her own and get her degree, because it was made clear she left school at the request of her boyfriend, fiance, became husband. She regretted it. She wanted to go back. And I get that, right? But she had no real obstacle on obtaining what it was. And there was no teachers that said, you shouldn't be here. There was no obstacle for her. She actually, her hardest thing was speaking up in front of people. And then when the money thing came, they devised a quick, simple way to get their money, which they got. And then Christina Aguilera shows up. It was a fun scene. But nothing was earned in the movie. And if you do watch Back to School, which there's somewhat of a similar motivation, where Rodney's character, who's very rich by the ways, but his wife leaves him. And he's like, I never got my degree. I'm going back to school. And there are obstacles along the way for him to overcome. It happened to be very funny. I think Melissa McCarthy could have been that funny. And we could have had that back-to-schoolish kind of a movie. I just wish more was earned, and there should have been more obstacles. Again, when you're looking at blockers, they had obstacles. The parents had obstacles, but what they were going to do. And even the girls did, too, when you think about it.
I never saw Back to School.
It's a 1987 movie.
Yeah.
Give or take that time period.
That's probably why.
But I do want to ask this. Is it harsh for me to say that I don't know if Ben and Melissa are the greatest collaborators, even though they're husband and wife?
Ben Falcone.
Yeah. Simply because, it is a tough task, but, when you're a director, and I know they wrote it together and then went into it, but as a director, your job is to bring out the best performance in your actors. And there's times, that sometimes, like one example, there's inexperienced directors or new directors that direct actors that they've always looked up to, and they think they're doing them a favor by not over-directing them, or they're so in awe. It's like, okay, let me back off. They know what they're doing. And then the result comes in, i.e. the final movie, and the actor's like, wait, why didn't you direct me better? That's your job, Like, I want you to tell me what I did right, what I did wrong, what I can improve upon. And then they're upset by that movie. I look at this and I think, it as far as direction, it didn't use the assets it had. And maybe it comes down to script.
Yeah, I think more of the problem is the writing, because it sounds like, I appreciate emotional, deep character stories, this. I like when it goes deep. But I went into this film not really expecting it to go deep, apparently it feels like you guys were. And so I wasn't as upset that they didn't go as deep, because I wasn't expecting it. It is a comedy. It's supposed to be light. So I think because it didn't go deep, I think that the problem is in the script and the writing, because it didn't write moments where it could have gotten darker or deeper, or had actual emotional beats built into the writing, into the moments, that would allow characters to have realistic moments. I don't think the directing is wrong. I think the storyline in the moments.
Okay.
There weren't emotional beats to get deep.
I would be curious, to see what was cut out, because I know that, an hour and 45 minutes for a comedy is a little on the lengthier side, certainly by old school terms, when it was like 90 minutes and they legit, like if you were at 91 minutes, cut down a minute. Okay. Right. So I would be curious if some of the transitional stuff that we're talking about was included in there. But going back to you mentioned like we wanted something a little bit deeper. I personally don't mind light. I'm trying to think of a movie, and if you guys have one, by all means throw it out, but the only one that keeps coming to my mind is Captain Underpants. That's not an in-depth movie, right, and yet it's funny, and it works. I think, at least.
It never got deep.
Game Night's not necessarily a deep movie, but I found it to be very funny. Same with Fist Fight. I think, and again, it was not that I necessarily look for deep in a comedy. I I just want more of earned emotional payoff, because I think that's what really helps a comedy. You have to go along with the characters, and it's not that I hated characters. That's the thing. There was nothing for them. There's no obstacle for any of our main characters to really try to get over. That was missing. As far as their collaboration, look, they're obviously in love with each other. They're a great couple together. Fine. I think they just have fun doing this. They're afforded, because of who she is, they're afforded an opportunity to collaborate and make movies together. And, are they the best? No, and we know Melissa McCarthy can act, right? St. Vincent. Let's take St. Vincent for a sec. She's a good actress. And she can be funny, she can play dramatic, and we know that she can be hysterical. I just think that together they find themselves so funny, and then when they get their friends to come into the movie, they're having a good time, but they're having a better time than I am watching them have a good time. There are some cases where they're having a way better time making the movie than I am ever watching it. But in this case, it was just so middle of the road. That, this is their third collaboration together. And when you look at those movies, Boss and Tammy and this one, they cut great trailers because they look really good as a 2.5 minute spot. Like this one looked kind of good. Looked like it had some funny things to it. But when you see the entire thing, it's like...
Well, the spot is made, the trailer's made on the premise and the notion, right? And so, like, we've all agreed that it had it had the crux of what it needed to sculpt a masterpiece. And that's just that. I don't know. Maybe I just hold comedies on a very high standard, but
seems like.
But I also, here's the thing. I also want to champion comedies when it comes to comedic movies. We've been talking about them for so long, and even the ones that we've loved, if they score 40%, we're raving about it. We're like, woo, it's a miracle. And so I do want to champion comedies in particular because I think, certainly in the Oscars race and so forth, they're highly overlooked for their artistry. And so I want to praise them. And so when something doesn't quite hit, it's no different than anything else. It just didn't hit.
I think that this show champions comedies a lot more than other shows of similar ilk. We want comedies, and we've talked about how comedy seems to be very difficult to do these days. Before, you can release a comedy, people would go to it, it could be very funny, but today now it's hard to make people laugh and go. And I'm talking about movies that we enjoyed. But even from a box office perspective, the last one to make $100 million, I believe, could have been Girls Trip, as far as a flat-out comedy. And there have been comedies since Girls Trip, and Girls Trip was a very funny movie. But Bad Moms 2 didn't do as well as the original Bad Moms, which did very well too.
I liked Bad Moms.
It's a very funny movie. I like Bad Moms. Bad Moms 2 Christmas. It just didn't do as well. It's hard to get people. I don't know what it is with comedy today.
But I think that's the thing. Comedy is so subjective. I was like, we like Cockblockers because there was good jokes in it, written jokes, and actual slapstick humor. There was some slapstick humor in this movie with the whole racquetball scene, whatever. I think comedy is so subjective. It's hard to cater to everybody.
But when you look at what those $100 million comedies do, they get a general mass audience to go because people laugh. And so like Blockers did pretty well, but not as good. Game Night, funny movie. People, I don't know. People, I think it's just hard to watch comedy when they can go onto YouTube and see 2-minute sketches these days. I think it's that. Harder to write.
I think people reserve the right to go to movies more so for stuff that, like a comedy you can watch at home with your friends. And that's certainly a lot more enjoyable. And the avenue for comedy versus like an Avengers, that's an event people really want to go to.
My counter to that is, and I'll ask Marisa, because you said you were laughing a lot. So when you saw Life of the Party, was it crowded, semi-crowded?
Yeah, it was crowded.
It was crowded. People are laughing. I always feel that comedy and horror movies are some of the best kinds of movies to see in a theater, because laughter I find to be very infectious. And if something's funny and that upheaval of laughter happens in a theater and everybody's laughing, sometimes you've laughed so hard that you've missed jokes because the movie continues to go on. I think comedies benefit more so than watching them at home. I think they benefit from watching them in a theater with a bunch of these strangers, because when a comedy hits and you're all laughing at the same thing, I think it becomes infectious, and that's the best part of watching a good comedy.
I don't disagree, but I was actually, I heard a pretty interesting thing of, as far as, remember, laugh tracks in sitcoms and so forth?
Sure.
Well, it was primarily because people at home watching those sitcoms, they need to establish that it's okay to laugh at your TV. And I think, no, it's been, you know, I've been dating back to like the 1950s,
yeah,
like at the inception of TV, people just didn't know, like, wait, I should be laughing. And we've gotten to a point where laugh tracks are so rarely used in sitcoms, and where I'm relating it to this is, I think people have gotten accustomed to laughing at comedies and being able to laugh alone. Again, I'm making counterpoint to going to the movies, I understand, but I'm just trying to explain perhaps why, you know, people have gotten that way. Is like, oh, I can laugh at home and it's okay.
Sometimes it's easier to laugh within a crowd than it is to laugh alone. So if everybody's laughing at the same thing that you're laughing at, it's sort of kind of okay. But if you're laughing at something that happens and nobody else is, all of a sudden you're like, oh okay. Oh, well, nobody else found this funny?
There was one time I laughed out loud and no one else did. It was
What scene?
the whole joke was like, we're still trying to figure out who shot JR. I laughed.
I laughed at that
I laughed
too.
at that too.
But other people didn't. Like, freaking stupid millennials don't get
They
that
might not
joke.
get that joke.
So I was like, I think, again, comedy is very subjective, and it's only like there are jokes that appeal to the older audience and jokes that appeal to the younger ones. It really is like, what's up your alley? I don't know what makes you laugh.
But here's the thing: we're not going to a sketch comedy or a stand-up comedy. At the end of the day, it's a movie. So even though people don't laugh at that joke, that shouldn't be the crux of the movie. Yeah, Robert McKee, who teaches story and you know, who screenwriting and so forth, world renowned for it, he'll be one of the first to say there's elements that you have to incorporate that make a good comedy. Now, at the end of the day, the jokes that are written and so forth, that's up to you. But there is a structured comedy no different than drama, horror, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And people have to become masters of that. And, you know, I don't think they mastered the story.
And Melissa McCarthy's character, right? Remember, I think it was at the same party, the big dance scene at the party, right? Melissa McCarthy does the worm.
The second party-ish, give or take.
Okay. That's the Melissa McCarthy I wanted to see throughout the movie. You know, I mean, she breaks out, but that's the funny Melissa McCarthy. I wanted her to have a little more edge, and plus being the adult too. I wanted her to impart a little, other than just being liked for being the mom and being really nice and everything and going what she's going through. It would have been nice for her to impart a little more like wisdom. I know she had that one speech to the girls, but I wanted it more than that. Because she is the adult in the room. So she does have some experience that she can share, just like the kids have experience that they can share to open up her eyes. She's been in this relationship that ended really badly. That's where the heart of this movie could have been more. And I wanted to see, like, when Melissa McCarthy's doing that physical comedy, again, from a comedian standpoint, there's not much better out there who can pull that off, because she is very funny, and they didn't allow her to be like sarcastic enough.
I want to talk about 2 points before we kind of shift gears into the production stuff, and if you guys have anything to add beyond my 2 points, by all means. But speaking of that 80s party in of itself, and as an example of, they were in an emotional scene, then randomly she just gets a text, okay, so let's alleviate this tension and let's go back to the comedy. And of all things, how serendipitous that was an 80s party. just everything just needed to work to get onto the next thing. And this episode is definitely overusing the word earned, but it just, an 80s party. Of course. How amazing that our main character grew up and will love the 80s and be amazing with this. Another thing.
So you're saying it was convenient?
Very convenient.
And if the kids knew who Don Johnson was in
prom,
Miami
that's
Vice, and they're not going to know JR. Like, there was some very specific detailed costumes there that they knew of. But, JR was a cultural event. That's what makes that joke very funny.
I know.
It was a funny joke. And I wish they followed that
a lot of people
up
didn't
more.
get.
Yeah, I agreed.
Well, the other thing, as I think about it, this is just maybe being really nitpicky. And for me, this one's not a big deal whatsoever. But the daughter had a boyfriend. And that was never explored in terms of relationship between the mother and daughter, because he would figure the fact that she's going through a divorce, she would try to give dating advice to her daughter in one way, shape, or form. Maybe. So that's, again, that in everything else, if it was there, great. But I also,
get that.
I'm not faulting the movie for
I get
not
that
having
it's
that.
again another missed opportunity, but it's also, the movie's not about the daughter, it's about Deanna.
But the daughter is
The
supposed to be
daughter's supposed to
integral.
be, the daughter's integral. Because
But
she has
the
to.
daughter's love life is not the movie.
Her love life, I agree, but the daughter relationship is integral, I think, to make the movie really, really work. Because she's the only lifeline that she has in that school, for doing this. In a sense.
Life.
Yeah.
Apart from Maya
Rudolph and her husband.
But they're too busy getting it on anyway. So
At least she inspired them to do that. They were funny. Again, her lines, and even when they were playing racquetball at a racquetball club that only had one racquetball court, but with the two guys, what did they describe them as? The critics from the Muppets? The two old guys, that was a funny joke. So yeah, I liked Maya Rudolph and her husband a lot. I thought they were very funny. Especially the dynamic at that dinner when we met that other couple that we had no idea who they were. And she's like, "Oh, come on." She was good. Maya was doing what Maya does best.
Well, so let's get into some pure stuff. Marisa, you said that you had a packed crowd and you were one of the younger people. Well, you are indeed correct. Over 80% of its audience was over the age of 25, and overall, about 70% were women.
Yeah. That is me. I'm older than 25 and I'm a woman, so
You fit perfectly.
I am within that demographic. See, and that's why I probably like this film more than you guys did.
Why is it? Because why do you think? Is it because Melissa McCarthy hasn't been on Saturday Night Live as a regular for a long time? Is it because she hasn't been in a huge hit comedy movie?
No, I think it's because in my age, people who grew up with Melissa McCarthy and Gilmore Girls were so accustomed to seeing her being sweet and funny, charismatic, endearing as that Suki. She's that lovable friend that's always around, that it's so full of life. It's fun. She's the one who brings the energy to the room. She's that friend that's always fun.
Right.
So that's what's appealing and why we keep watching Melissa McCarthy movies, because we know that type of character that she brings to whatever screen that she's on, whether it be television or movies. She's fun. You go to her to watch the fun energy, and
I don't
apparently. She was kind of the life of the party in this movie. She had her moments.
It could be the trailer, because the way it made it seem was the joke about the quad, right? Well, I'm bringing back the quad. No one hangs out in the quad, Mom. What? I think part of it set up the humor to be a little bit older in a sense. And, I get it. It came out on Mother's Day or Mother's Day weekend overall. And I think that they didn't leverage that as much as they could have, I don't think. Certainly not in the marketing.
And when you look at Melissa McCarthy's hits as a comedy, though, she's the character with edge. She was the breakout in Bridesmaids. Like, that movie broke her out. A lot of people talked about her performance in Bridesmaids. When you watch Heat, number one, I thought it was a brilliant pairing to put Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy together. Stroke of genius. And they were fantastic together. And part of it was because you had Sandra Bullock, in a sense, playing straight to Melissa McCarthy, who was, she was the tough Boston cop. She was great. And then when you looked at Spy, she played frumpy, but she was hysterical as frumpy. You could get that. And again, they paired her up. You had other people in that movie. Jason Statham, who
was the straight agent in that one.
And the English woman that in Spy 2 is very funny. But those movies are like her highest grossing and the ones that people go to a lot. I just saw the trailer for Happy Time Murders that she's in, the one with the puppets. That's the Melissa McCarthy I think people like to see. And even when she does something like Sean Spicer on Saturday Night Live, she's brilliant and she owns it. And she's great at doing that sort of thing. Her physical comedy seemed a little lost in this because she was so safe. It seemed like they were just pulled back a little. That's why. But I still think she's definitely one of the funniest women that we have to go to see at the movies.
Here's what I'll say as a positive, right? Hopefully this Marisa kind of makes it all up. Every one of these actors, women and men, I'd like to see in more movies. Like, especially the sorority girls. I thought there was a spark there that, even though they didn't always have a funny line to say, then I saw something. I was like, ooh, I'd be interested to see what they will do next. I really did. So
I like them.
You didn't like them in this film.
I'm sorry?
You want to see them in other films.
No, but I said I had no problem with performance in this movie. I like those girls too. I wish they were just given more, and I wish there was more resolution. I wish there was more something going on to give them more to make this a comedy. Again, I go back to Blockers. Those friends I got as being great friends together. Like, they were going to make it, they were going to continue to be friends through and beyond college, and I got their bond. These girls, I wish I didn't know them as much as I knew the girls in Blockers, and I knew the parents more from Blockers too. I got a better sense of who these people were, and I wanted more of that mother-daughter relationship as well, because in the end, it's sort of kind of the heart of this story. And when a woman of, I don't know, how old do you think she was supposed to be? 40, maybe? I think 40s, right?
Mid-40s.
She said 21.
She said 21. And
I'd say mid-40s. If her daughter's old enough to be a senior, who would probably around the 21, 22 age.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd give her in the mid-40s.
Yeah, so this is, it's not a midlife crisis that she's going through. She's going through a life-size crisis with divorce and realizing, hey, I got to go back to school, and what the comedy from that should come, but it should be a lot more naturalistic. Going back to college isn't like it was when she was. The quad joke, for example. So I just wish she just had more obstacles to learn along the way of going back to school and what that's all about for a 40-year-old who looks and appears to have been a housewife ever since she had gotten married. I don't believe she had a career doing it. She gave up her life. So this is one of those life-affirming. This could have been a far more funny, a life-affirming movie where I got to change things and I'm going to go back to school. I want to live out my dream. And it's particularly in these days of women empowerment, I think that the message is there for that people can relate to.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. For me, Marisa, maybe you'll appreciate this. Part of the reason why I held this such a higher standard, because we'd just seen Tully, and it was one of the more realistic movies about motherhood, and we talked ad nauseum about that. Mm-hmm. And one of the sweet messages, this doesn't spoil the movie in any way, shape, or form. One of the messages of that movie is like, what you have is actually beautiful, even if, like, the fact that, you know, the main character, Charlize Theron, achieves motherhood and achieves stability of any kind is a beautiful notion from the get-go. And in some sense, that was highly overlooked. And in fact, Maddie does say, she's like, I never got to do anything, and, I have nothing to show for it. And she's like, hey, what about me? So that's why, what I hold this to that higher of a standard, because I know that movie taught me a lot, Marisa.
Mm-hmm. And this one didn't.
Well, no, it's just I think it devalues some of the things that if women are trying to teach men anything, I think it devalues some of the lessons and whatnot. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Overall, kudos though. It did get number 2 at the box office, although no one was gonna come within touching distance of Avengers of Infinity War. I don't think anyone wanted to. So that's why we didn't get a lot. This Breaking In was the other movie that was released alongside it, certainly from a major release standpoint. About almost 18 million in its weekend debut, but certainly, like I said, nowhere near the numbers that Avengers got and continues to get.
No, it's hard. We're in a lull until this weekend right now, and I think a lot of people were staying off. They were giving lots of broad berth to Avengers in many weeks. So that's why you're getting movies like Overboard, which actually overperformed, right? And then you have Life of the Party, Breaking In from Universal, but you're not really coming up with anything that's going to give Avengers a run for the money. These are smaller movies, which should be released and should offer alternative. In fact, I was watching the Tully Anatomy of a Movie, and you said something at the top of that, again, which we talk about here. It's like, yes, there are other movies out here other than Avengers. This is one of them. Life of the Party is one of them. So is Breaking In. Overboard was one of them. That was the number 1 new release. It falls number 2 to Avengers. These movies should come out. They should offer variety, and they should they should reach women. They should reach people who like thrillers. So I have no problem with Life of the Party coming out when it did. And like you said, it was 18 million opening weekend. It came in number 2. That means it's the number 1 new movie of that week. I mean, that's the way I would spin it. And 22 million right now total domestically, 26 worldwide. I don't know how much the movie costs. There's no information.
Rough $30 million production budget. So, I don't know, 50,
and it
60.
was Warner Brothers, and they put a little money into marketing it. So, yeah, it's going to be tough to make that money back. They'll probably do it in ancillary markets, but we've got 2 big weeks coming up with 2 really big releases.
We're starting the marathon.
Yeah.
It did get a B on Cinema Score and a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. Marisa, at the top of the show, you said you called out the criticism towards the movie, so I want to allow you to speak to that.
I don't think it deserves
how you want to counter it.
39.40. I think it's definitely higher than that. I think that's roughly being kind of mean. Is it a perfect movie? No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. But I don't think it deserves the 39.40. And we know that Rotten Tomatoes is also ran by most of the demographic is male. And this is a woman-female driven movie. So I think that the ratings could be shifted for this film and for the criticism afterwards.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this Anatomy of a Movie?
I just think, look, I've got no problem with Falcone and McCarthy working together. I think they should take note, because I think they're both very funny people, and I do believe that they actually really know comedy very well. I think they need to be inspired. I think they should learn from maybe their mistakes. They should look and go, how can we make this better? If we're going to go back and make another movie together, how do we do it? What's funny? And they should really go for broke. They sort of tried on the boss. Tammy was just a mishmash of, they wanted drama and comedy. They could make a really good comedy together, because they are both funny people, but they should really go for it.
Do you think that's part of what they're doing, is that they're just going for it because they feel like there's this pressure, and like every time they're afforded the opportunity to work together, they have to put in everything, including the kitchen sink, and a kitchen sink for the kitchen sink to wash the kitchen sink with?
I didn't see the kitchen sink in this movie.
I saw.
See, I just think that they come up with this great premise. That's what inspired. Like, geez, Ben Falcone says, you know what? My mother-in-law was over, and I was looking at the both of them, and I said, geez, what if mom, like, what if at 40, Melissa's mom went back to school when Melissa was 18, right? Well, make that movie, because that movie sounds fun. Because I have to think that Melissa McCarthy might have, like, she already had comedian chops. That's the movie that I wanted to see. And with the whole Google thing and the trailer, that's what I thought I was going to get. They should just take the blinders off. I think they worked together and they were trying to make this as safe. What was this rated? It had to be just PG-13, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to go for raunch. You don't have to make things overly raunchy, because that doesn't necessarily make a good movie either. But I think as a couple, they are very funny in their own right. And I think that if they have that movie in them to do. So I say, try, and try again. If at first or 3 times you don't succeed. But I think they can. And I think eventually they will, if given the opportunity.
Marisa, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I enjoyed this film. I'd probably watch it again because I think there is some rewatchability factor in it. Do Melissa and Ben worked together well on screen? Probably, sure. It might not get the production numbers and all the money back that, like, if you're going to compare it to Infinity Wars, you can't. It's just so unfair to
It's very unfair.
Compare this to, like, already, like, a cinematic universe. That's unfair to, like, base numbers off of.
I agree.
That's so wrong, and it's shitty that people do that. So, like, if you're going to compare it to other comedies, maybe, yeah, it might be lower in numbers, but that doesn't stop other comedians from always working together. I mean, look at Adam Sandler. He always works with his same friends and production company. Are his movies all great either?
No,
so
and he's
like,
relegated to Netflix now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I don't think it's just because they're married doesn't mean that their movies and their product is successful. No. If you work together, then work together.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like this is a movie that they did for fun. And sure, I had fun. Yeah,
and I don't mind, to your point, I don't mind when that collaborative effort involves their friends, especially if the friends are funny, you know? I like that, and I think that's part of what made comedies back in the 80s, going into the 90s, like, work really well, because you saw similar people being paired together. There should be more of that. When you find something that sticks, like I always said from Bad Moms, right? I always felt that Mila Kunis and Christina Applegate could be fantastic in a movie together. There's chemistry there, huh?
They were.
What other movie?
No. Like they were.
Yeah,
they were
they're
great together.
fantastic together, right? When you see that chemistry magic on screen, I'm not saying that you're going to get lightning in a bottle, but you can use it. Put them in another movie together as something. Nurture that. Pull from that, because you're working. There are very many talented people out there, and there are some new people, like you said. These girls. Maybe some of these girls could work well together in another movie. Put them in different plots, but for sure there's a chemistry there. Casting should put that, and they don't have to be $100 million movies. You got to start off small before you could start making the big bucks. So Absolutely. That's all.
Well, as harsh as I've been towards Ben and Melissa, I do wish them nothing but the best, and I've been harsh because I do want the best for them. So if that helps, speaking of which, you can always give your opinion as to what we've said, if you agree, disagree, or anything else that we haven't brought up yet that you guys would like to talk about. There's a whole comment section. We're going to give our social media handles in a moment. And of course, if you're listening, whatever the app is, whether iTunes and so forth, leave a rating, leave a comment that helps spread the word to other users on that app.
How can people do that? How can people do that on iTunes? I know how they do it on YouTube because, boy, God Almighty, have I read?
It's a little bit, go on your phone. I know most of you, whether it's your tablet or your phones, all you have to do is when you're on the podcast app, just click the rating and give a little rating. It's you might have to use your fingers and type out some words, but hey, don't we all? Either way, at the very least, the fact that you watch or listen, you know what? Kudos to you. So that's already a victory for us, even without the rating.
And if you watched this movie, you liked it? What was your favorite scene?
Yeah, that's
I always like to know in a comedy. What's your favorite scene?
What's your favorite Melissa McCarthy movie? In fact, if you're curious and you haven't checked out all of them, do watch them. And we've covered a lot of them here on Anatomy of a Movie. In our archives, you are welcome to go in there. And, it's a whole a Google.
Here's a question. Were we together during when Bridesmaids came out?
We were not. We were not bridesmaids together. All right. That wraps us up. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us. And as mentioned, we've got a lot of stuff in the rear view window of movies that we've done, including Avengers, including a lot of comedies, including a lot of Melissa McCarthy movies. But looking ahead, we will be doing Deadpool, then the Han Solo movie, and we're starting the marathon of summer fun, aren't we all?
Summer is here, like Memorial Day next weekend.
Absolutely.
My birthday on Tuesday, for anybody who cares.
We have at Serafini TV if you guys want to interact with her.
Yep.
We have at DMovies1701.
Please support me on Twitter.
And check out philsvitek.com. That is all my social media stuff. You can connect with me there or see other stuff that I'm a part of. And until next time, keep watching movies.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.